Hi, Earth Angels. Today is a spectacular day. It's all about the secrets of marriage. And I can talk about it. Yes, I talk about a lot of topics. And so, it's two people on the same common ground, going the same pathways, and positively challenging each other. And trustworthiness, self-awareness, self-love, love for yourself and love for them. And you must have foresight, premonition, your intuition as well, and consult God in, is this the right person for you? And how to avoid that if they're not. And that challenge is something that you don't have to take on. A lot of women believe that they have to take this challenge on. And it's not up to you to fix their reality, because there are so many people who have spent 10, 20, 30, 40 years in the wrong marriage, the wrong person, the wrong everything. The whole thing was wrong. And, my mom was telling me some things that, well, you know what? I'll speak for me. Papa told me he is the wrong one. Don't go with him. And I was like, I could take this challenge on. But, didn't know that's what I was doing. I just thought I knew everything and I was going to prove Papa wrong, And boy, did I. There's no words to say how Papa was right. And when you don't listen, you make things much more difficult than it needed to be. And so I'm going to talk about, here, let me show you. Sacred Marriage, this book, look. I always have the glare in there, but it's an incredible and amazing book, Sacred Marriage. And I did do probably 2 other messages on this. All right, so look, this is it. The cleansing of marriage. Where are we at here? And how marriage exposes who you truly are. I've never thought of that way. I thought, marriage is so wonderful, my wonderful husband, and the mansion, the white picket fence, or, the country living, all these fantasies women come up with. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and read a few of these passages for you. Marriage is the greatest test of all time. And only people that have been married, probably even they still don't realize it. Well, after the divorce, they really realize it. All right. But now I welcome the test instead of dreading. It is much more than a test, of temperaments and anger, sweetness. As people sometimes think, it is a test of the whole character and affects every action, by T.S. Eliot. Marriage is the operation by which a woman of vanity and a man of egotism are extracted without anesthetics. Yeah, I'm gonna need some anesthesia. This is Helen Rowland, and here's one more. One of the best wedding gifts God gave you was the full-length mirror, reflecting on yourself, self-reflection. And had there been a card attached, it would have read, "Here's to helping you discover what you're really like." Gary and Betsy Ruchuchi. I love the last one. Admittedly, it wasn't your typical date, whatever. You probably been out on many dates or a few dates, and one of them wasn't just your typical date. Like you knew that she was the one or that he was the one. So, some of the ancients realized that the marital life could be even tougher than the celibate life. And that's why people keep saying, don't hate on other people's marriages, but people do. They try to break up, home wreckers, try to break up other people's happiness because they think that is better. When neither nor, as far as I'm concerned, because being single is very difficult as well. But in God's word, 2 is better than 1. Because, when one gets sick, you have the one to help, and so on. So, if one person is spiritual and one isn't, that's a challenge. It's not going to work. And I see it all the time because I watch the dating shows, and one is, whatever they say they are, agnostic, atheist. They got so many different names now. And it's so many people that literally try to make it work. And then they cry, how come it didn't work? Because you tried to align yourself with someone that there was no chemistry, there was no connection, there was no construct, no concept of, this is the one, this is the right one for me, because, you have the connection and so on. And so they try to make it work when they don't. And the children suffer, everybody suffers, grandma, grandpa, the therapist, everybody suffers because people are determined to try to make something work that doesn't work, and they do it across the board, all across their life. I watch it. And I don't know what that means, making stuff more difficult than it needs to be. I don't know if people think that they are, powerful now or whatever. I don't. It just doesn't make any sense. As someone who has great respect and love, you know, for family, you know, spirituality, I'm not, it'd be a whole nother different topic if you start talking about religious and religions and people's beliefs and all that. So I'll just keep it to, you know, that. All right. So, um, okay, let's see what they're saying. They're saying something here about the early church views most. Well, see, when you have premarital activities, that's another thing that ruins the possibility and the chance of being equally yoked and getting to the altar. Because as you can see right here in America alone, you want to do your statistics, there's literally 70-80% of children out of wedlock now, compared to back in the 1960s, the 1970s, and it's just getting worse and worse. And they're putting a negative connotation on the nuclear family and the unit and, husband, wife, children, your spirituality, because you are moving in God's image. And that's what He intended, for a man and woman to be married, not to be, separated and not coming together and just fighting on everything. And so, I'm just going to stick to the secrets of marriage, because then I'm going to start getting off into talking about how woman, so when you have the babies and the extramarital or the premarital, then it interferes with your marriage. The secret to marriage is not to do it. Be celibate and wait, which is hard to do. And so, I can speak for myself, because, I had children out of wedlock. So, and I know you're probably going to say, okay, then why are you talking about marriage? Well, my mom and dad was married for 30 years. Beautiful, lovely, amazing, extraordinary life. And my mother was a registered nurse, and my dad was a pathologist, and they worked in the same hospital for years. And he was a pastor as well. We had 2 churches, and mom and dad are earth angels, and I love them and am so happy that they were my mom and dad. So, yeah, and let's get to it, to what they're saying here, because I can put it into my own words from personal experience, how when you do it backwards, when you don't follow, the proposal, and you're doing it the wrong way, then it just ends up wrong. And of course you say, well, no, because, we had children and then we had got married, 2 years later. Well, yeah, you are the exception to the rule. All right. So, they did not understand that by not practicing celibacy, it made the relationship even more difficult. Okay? And in fact, some of the ancients realized that the marital life could be even more tougher than the celibate life. Centuries ago, Pseudo Athanasius quoted a female teacher named Syncletica as saying, "Therefore, we will not seduce ourselves with the thought that people who are in the world are carefree. For perhaps, in comparison, they toil much more than we do." In general, for women, the hatred in the world is great, for they beat children, bear children, difficulty. I said beat children. Okay, that's even more. Uh, yeah, yeah, beating your children, no. And so, bearing children is difficult. Yes, it is. I have firsthand experience in that. And so, um, and she's in danger, carrying the baby for 9 months, all the possibilities, of her, of harm being done to her health, and just first trimester, yes. It's just when you get, second and third trimester, that's when preeclampsia and so many other different, things that could go wrong. And so, yeah. And so women are able to endure, absolutely. She knows this is a woman speaking here from back then. Her name is Syncletica. And so women are the nourishers. They breastfeed the babies, and they, when they are ill, they take care of the babies here, and they survive these things without having a result for their labor. And so, yes, we do these things because it just naturally comes to a woman. She takes care of her children, the whole gamut, when they're sick, well, all of that. And so here, Ambrosia had, similar thoughts, to comparison woman, and the great difficulty they have in bearing children and all that entails that, and nurturing them and loving them and teaching them. And that's a lifelong thing. It doesn't stop when they turn 18. I don't know why people say that. It never has and never will. So, Ambrosia had similar thoughts. Let us compare the advantages of married woman with that which awaits. Yes, she marries and then cries and weeps. Interesting. I don't believe I've ever seen my mom cry and weep over her being married. But let's keep going. How many vows did she make with tears? She conceives, and her fruitfulness brings her trouble before offspring. Why speak of the troubles of nurturing, nursing, and marrying? These are the miseries of those who are fortunate. A mother has hairs, but it increases her sorrows. Let's keep going. One night during the earlier years of our marriage, I woke up and was astonished at my wife's endurance. We had 2 children at the time, and it was a very stressful season for me. And my wife had gone out of her way to schedule a very romantic evening for the both of us. Later that night, however, our children became ill, and we were not able to partake in the special event. And so Lisa was very exhausted. She had to take care of the babies. And that happens. Something pop up. You done planned this event. You probably planned it months ago. And then here's something comes up, and I'm telling you, that's life. happens all the time. And so she had been up all night, and now she was suffering a hungry nursing baby, desperate to suck for breast milk that wasn't there. Uh-oh. When the baby was put down, Lisa had to hold a feverishly toddler, too, in her lap. Oh, my goodness. And so she was tending to the baby and patting her and stroking her and rubbing her forehead. I saw my wife giving virtually every inch of her body in selflessness in this, and a thought hit me. Let's hear this thought. She's a saint. That night, being celibate man would have sounded like a dream vacation to Lisa. How could anyone suggest that she had compromised her growth in holiness entering into this marriage life situation that calls for such heroic selflessness? Absolutely. That's what marriage is. To a heroine and a hero coming together. And so if you want to make sure of keeping things intact, okay, here, you need emotional maturity. So you must give from your heart and wrap it up carefully, round with hobbies and little luxuries to avoid the entanglements, and lock it up in a safe place. You know, it will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable if you want to make sure of keeping your marriage intact. Emotional maturity. And I don't even think they spoke of this back in the day. Maybe they call it another name. And so, having a productive conversation, oh, okay. So having a productive conversation probably would not, he's saying, lead to the argument of celibacy or marriage as the preferred pathway to holiness. Christians have walked both paths successfully. Okay, now the important thing to view in this challenge of our particular life situation as a platform for growth, an athlete who truly wants to improve his performance doesn't look for the easy way out. That's right. And so to sum it up, what he's saying about the special event that his wife Lisa had planned, and they wasn't able to, have a wonderful romantic evening because the children got sick. Or, anything, could happen. Something minimal or, marginal or just gigantic, could happen. Car breakdown or whatever. All right. It probably will not be as a productive conversation to argue either celibacy or marriage as the preferred pathway to holiness. So, Paul writes in Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church. He goes on to say that Christ gave himself up for the church, that he might make her holy and cleanse her, so that the church would be without, spot or wrinkle or any other blemish. Ephesians 5:27. Loving something and purifying something go hand in hand. What marriage has done for me is hold up a mirror to my sin. Very interesting. That's, his title, that marriage exposes who you really truly are, So if you're pretending to be, the great, then let's not pretend, just be. Okay, loving something and purifying something go hand in hand. A husband who truly loves his wife wants to see her grow in purity. A wife who truly loves her husband will want to see him grow in godliness. Both will put the growth in godliness above affluence, public opinion, or personal ease. What marriage has done for me is hold up a mirror to my sin. It forces me to face myself honestly and consider my character flaws, selfishness, and anti-Christian attitude. And so, yeah, you say that you're such and such, you're loyal, loving, longevity, but then you're showing the opposite. So yeah, I understand. Okay, and so sometimes what it is hard to take in the first years of marriage is not what we find out about our partners, but what we find out about ourselves. That you are loving, or selfless, whatever it is that you find out, sharing your life with someone. And so I always thought of myself as a patient and forgiving person, but then things changed. So that's understandable as well. I had never before gotten close to anyone, and so in marriage, when we began dealing with our differences, I saw how small and unforgiving I could be. I discovered a hardness in me I had never experienced before. And yeah, it could be that way. If she does something and you're just not going to forgive her for it. And then that's something that y'all would have to work on, because that's what marriage is. It's not that it stops the day, you know, you have the wedding and the blissful, beautiful music and the decadent food and the wonderful, loving people, who came to your special occasion and shared your beautiful moment. After that, what do you do? So, I experienced the same phenomenon. What? In ninth grade, I was voted most polite kid for the annual yearbook. I have always thought of myself as reasonably patient and charitable. That is until I got married and discovered how passionately annoyed I was. When I grew up, my family lived by a simple rule: if you take out an ice cube, you must refill the tray. All right, that's everybody's household, okay? At our house, all the kids, nobody wanted to fill the ice cube tray. I kid you not. You go in there to get some ice, and it's empty. There's nothing, and you're like pissed. Yeah. So, yeah, that was the rule in ours, but it was hard because nobody wanted to do it. All right, so it is amazing how much such a small detail irritated me. And so I asked Lisa, how much do you love me? More than all the world, she professed. Uh-oh. I didn't need you to love me that much, I said. I just want you to love me for 7 seconds. What on earth are you talking about? Lisa said. Well, I timed how long it takes for you to fill the ice cube tray and discover it just takes 7 seconds. Oh, Gary, are we back on this again? So it's just little things that annoy your loved one. And yeah, it's just is that way sometimes. But now if it gets, you know, I think if it gets really bad, then y'all wasn't meant to be together. If that, whatever that little irritant is, little thing, and it just makes you that upset, then there's something more underlying, and then y'all, probably should have never got together. And so it finally dawned on me one day that if it takes Lisa just 7 seconds to fill the ice cube tray, that all it takes for me to do as well. So was I being really so selfish that I was willing to let 7 seconds worth of our uh, conscious become serious issue in my marriage. Was my capacity to show charity really that limited? Indeed, it was. Oh my gosh, that is funny. I mean, I've heard of so much, you know, where they didn't put the dishes in the dishwasher, or they left the toilet seat up, or they left the dirty clothes, on the floor, or whatever. It just goes on and on. So, indeed, it was. Being so close to someone in marriage, yes. You have to see each other every day, all day for the rest of your life. You're going to have to improvise. You're going to have to come up with spontaneity, come up with, you know, things to revive the love. Because it's just some days it's just not going to be there. Okay, so I am under virtual 24-hour surveillance now. Not that Lisa makes it seem like that. It's just that I'm aware of it everywhere. Lisa is next to me. Every hour I take off for recreation is an hour that Lisa will know about. Where I eat and lunch and everything. How, what, when, and where. Uh-oh. And so my appetite and lust and desires at all is in full view of Lisa. Uh-oh. This presupposes, of course, that I'm willing to be confronted with my sin, that I'm willing to ask Lisa, where do you see unholiness in my life? I want to know about it and I want to change it. And this takes tremendous courage. Wow. Oh my God, I never thought of it that way, to ask the one I love, where do you see the mistakes and whatnot that I'm doing, you know? Wow. Okay, so where someone receives constant adulation, it is invaluable to have another person come alongside who will see through to the real you. The first obvious result of this is the fall and the breakdown in the marital intimacy. And so, yeah, I mean, if they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing, that's what's causing the downfall of your romantic intimacy, then, things must change, you know. So, yeah, they're looking at other, you know, and just doing all kinds of other things that's taking away from your marriage. Yeah, it's undoubtedly going to crumble, crack. So, in this relationship where depravity is exposed and where our dignity is best lived out, just go back in time to the days of Adam and Eve, and the first marriage was them in the context of the first sin. And the first obvious result of the fall was the breakdown in the marital intimacy. Neither Adam nor Eve welcomed the fact that their weaknesses were known as obvious as a little girl's attempt to wear makeup. All of a sudden, they felt all of kind of funny and naked, and they started blaming each other. You know the story where Satan came into heaven and the Garden of Eden and tempted Eve and, tricked her, and they said it was the bite of the fruit, the forbidden tree of life, do not touch. And so God said that, and so Eve, didn't listen, and so she was tricked by Satan, and then whatever that word is, she got, convinced Adam, to try it, and then that's where all the life's, you know, um, problems transpired. So, do you hide things from your spouse? Because they start to hide from God in the garden. So, they said that Adam and Eve started covering themselves with fig leaves and everything because God had said, "What have you done, Adam?" And, Satan knows how to go through the woman to get to the man. And, that's definitely a message I would expand on at a later date. And so, um, what? How many great men do you know? Well, I mean, there is a lot of great men out there. You know, my papa. Yes, he's one of them. Okay, and so I frequently stated that I think God often gives wives the influential men in part to keep their husbands' feet on the ground. When someone receives constant adulation, it is invaluable to have another person come alongside who will see through to the real you. So, um, Blaise Pascal wrote, "We have not sufficiently plumbed the wretchedness of man in general, not our own in particular. When we are still surprised at the weakness and corruption of man, being in a marriage relationship forces me to realize where I fall short, and it encourages me to plumb both the wretchedness of man and, the man in general, and myself in particular. As a spiritual exercise, few things are more profitable than this kind of examination." Francois Fenelon, an 18th century Christian mystic, wrote that all the saints are convinced that sincere humility is the foundation of all virtues, an opinion shared by the great Anglican writer William Law. Humility is so essential to the right state of our souls that there is no pretending to a reasonable or pious life without it. So, yes, absolutely. Yes, being humble helps, because if you think you are so much more spectacular than everyone else, that becomes a problem. So, yes, you should be humble, even if you are magnificent. All right, so we may as well think to see without eyes or live without breath as to live in the spirit of religion without the spirit of humility. And what is humility in part? Let's get to it. Fenelon tells us it is a certain honesty and childlike willingness to acknowledge our faults, to recover from them, and to submit to the advice of experienced people. These will be solid, useful virtues adapted to your sanctification. I believe it is possible to enter marriage with a view to being cleansed spiritually. If that is, we do so willingly to embrace marriage as a spiritual discipline. To do this, we must not enter marriage predominantly to be fulfilled emotionally and, satisfied physically. And so we must embrace the reality of having our flaws exposed to our partner and thereby having them exposed to us as well. So couples don't fall out of love so much as they fall out of repentance. Very interesting. So, sin never seems quite as shocking when it is known only to us. When we see how it looks or sounds to another, it is magnified 10 times over. The celibate can hide frustration by removing herself from the situation, but the married man or woman has no true refuge. Yeah, there's nowhere to hide. So, it is hard to hide when you share the same bed. So, you do the dating dance. I have a theory behind it. Couples don't fall out of love so much as they fall out of repentance. Sin, wrongful attitudes, and personal falling outs and failures, they are not dealt with. So it erodes the relationship. And yeah, that makes sense. And eventually erasing the once lofty promise made in your vows in the early on and less polluting the passion. All of us enter marriage with sinful attitudes. When these attitudes surface, the temptation will be to hide them or even to run to another. And so, if you couldn't feel that you could open up, to your husband or wife. I don't know why you got married. So don't give in to the temptation to resent your partner as your own weaknesses are revealed. So, yes, I love this. Don't give in to that temptation to resent your partner for your own downfall, your own flaws. Everyone has them. Everyone must work on them. So, yes, I love this. This is, you know, the secret to marriage. Love it. So, I'm going to put a bookmarker in and stop on this part, and on my next slide, or just giving you a short on it, I'll have some more beautiful, inspiring words. You know, that's what I'm here for. I love to inspire you, love to uplift you. And marriage is the key. You heard me say in many other messages, self-love is the key. And marriage is the key because, as you can see what's happening in the world, the nuclear family is being completely obliterated because man and woman are not coming together. They're not making the connection. They're not becoming into unison and getting married and making a go of it, and that how beautiful and sacred life is and marriage is. And then for the children, the beautiful family that God has blessed you with. And so, yeah, yes, marriage is key.